Remember the last video I made? Yeah, that one. In the midst of editing that video, I was notified that Blue Archive China made 3 more PVs with an oddly similar style as the Azusa PV I talked about previously. At first, I wasn't really planning to make another PV analysis anytime soon, but after checking those PVs out, I decided, hey, why not one more? And I said that while I was editing the Azusa video where I originally planned to implement my takes in, but couldn't because of time constraints. Some of you might not know what PV I'm referring to, and well, it's these 3. One is an Eden 3D PV while the other 2 are more student focused. And unlike my previous video, I actually asked my good friend Pengy if he wants to join me on talking about PVs for way longer than anyone should be. To my surprise, he immediately obliged, and he's now kind of a co-writer, I think, or some sort for this project. Anyhow, a thing I would like to mention before continuing is that I wanted to say that I'm analyzing these PVs without having the full story in mind. The reason is that due to me not really remembering how the story fully went down, considering that I read it a while ago with low levels of comprehension, meaning that I won't be as sharp as Pengy, where he picks up my slack with going over more in-depth with the storytelling and the other visual cues.
Hello, name's Pengy. This is actually my first time being invited co-creating an analysis video, let alone being in a video, so huge thanks to Mr. Astron for inviting me to such project. I'm a big fan when it comes to compelling lore and lovable characters, and Blue Archive is not a slack from it with their amazing plot and likable characters. If I were to be honest, Tree of Eden might be my favorite arc of all time, just right after Volume F. And that is saying a lot when you consider that all arcs in Blue Archive are such a banger with different vibes, morals, and expectations. My opinions on PVs are just one of the most generic replies to a word like, it looks great, and then go on with my day. But as soon as we take a closer look at these PVs, it shows a lot more than it meets the eye, and it's usually a big treat for those who are really into the game story. This PV in particular is, if you have not guessed it, is about the Treaty of Eden arc, in particular chapter 4 of the 3rd volume. Quick disclaimer, I'm not really a technical person when it comes to how fit the transition is or how the music feels, so excuse me if I ramble a lot, but I digress.
And with that out of the way, sticking to the previous video's theme, let us start with unlike the other PVs, this one starts very aggressive and loud. A lot of footsteps on wet surfaces due to concurrent rain, with a mixture of multiple shots coming from a mid-sized caliber rifle. These sound effects are also supported visually, with a handful of smoke and rain effects. They also kept the screen blank to make the intro more mysterious, leaving the viewers in this questioning phase, well, where they go, wait a minute, who's that? Upon this intro. Afterwards, you can hear someone falling onto the ground. At this moment, nobody really knows exactly what's going on, bringing back the questions of what happened or who fell down to the table. Following this, the scene reveals itself through a dissolve transition, revealing Saori in her iconic kneeling pose in a complete sense of despair. This emotion is enhanced through sounds of harsh rain with thunder to really send that emotion home. It is also pretty fucking loud, almost overlapping the same levels as the music used.
The screen shows a shot of her looking at her hand, and then events during the Treaty of Eden flashes right after, signaling her confusion as to what she have done. As her eyesight gets hazy, she looks down at a puddle and sees a reflection of her younger self, banging through what it seems to be glass. We can't really decipher what she's trying to say, but from what we could tell, it looks like a plea for help. And then a close-up shot of her reflection talking. We can see what it seems to be bubbles coming out from her mouth, which could signify that she could be drowning. Saori's memories flashes through the screen during the times she chose to be the leader of the Arisu squad. This correlates to the bubble scene, as it could be interpreted as drowning in responsibilities. After this scene, it shows Saori standing in front of her younger self. This reminds me of the scene similar to Azusa, which can be seen as a correlation, as they both share the same struggles as mentioned during one of their conversations during the story.
Saori felt a bit empathetic, so she decided to slowly close it on herself. However, the presence of very minor glitch effects in the song makes this interaction a bit too good to be true. And it was.
The vibe completely changes into this hard, bassy music which invokes pressure and uncertainty. Red eyes are plastered all over the background. These eyes in particular are focused on Saori, which can be interpreted as putting a focus on her, giving all the pressure in order to meet the expectations on whom she's trying to appeal to. As the scene intensifies, we get an upwards view of Saori, and although for a short moment on the foreground, we see vines of thorns shifting around the screen. Thorns are often associated with restriction, as one wouldn't want to be hurt by its barbs, thus restricting one's ability to move or act. In this PV, we can make this connection as Saori was never able to make a choice as she was restricted by the mindful eyes that are focused on her. And after all that, we get to the scene where Atsuko is suspended by said vines holding her body. This is the climax of the PV, as we now know why Saori was in a predicament in the first place. Her closest friend is now imprisoned and there is nothing she can do about it. It is then followed by a zoom out shot from Saori's eyes reflecting Atsuko, joined with the other members of the R squad with their emotions of confusion and helplessness plastered on their faces. We later see a change of expression in Saori's face. It expresses anger or determination, which means she has not given up yet. In this particular moment, we are shown the unwavering will of Saori, which we thought was gone but still persists, and with this is what truly makes her the true leader of the R squad.
There are a couple things that I can say about this PV, so let me start with the most impactful element, which is its music. The first thing that I thought of when I heard the music for the first time is that it reminded me of an artist named Alvik. The music in this PV kind of resembles one of Alvik's electronic dance tracks called Now I Know I Know. Other than that, there is one opportunity they sadly missed where instead of prolonging the rain sound effect, they chose to cut and fade it out to highlight the sound of someone collapsing. What they could have done is to not cut the rain sound effect and instead keep it in, because when you pay attention to the sound effects, they put a shimmer sound to enhance the dissolve transition, and when you hear it even more closer, it really sounds very similar, and if the said rain sound effect was kept in, it would sound way more seamless. I get it, they wanted to drive the viewer's attention to the collapsing sound, but there are multiple ways to also do that, but with the rain sound still present. Like for example, lowering the volume of the rain sound effect just enough so it doesn't overlap against the collapsing sound effect, so it doesn't lose its wanted focus. Moving on, the animation in this PV is actually pretty solid. Nothing really felt off, and they pretty much nailed it, until these two scenes. Remember what I said in the previous video about the live 2D movements? Yeah, they're a bit weird, and this part is also fucking weird, since it has a lot of unnecessary movements that make the scene, again, look fucking weird. And I know that these types of media genres don't really need to be realistic, especially when the material that is used in said media is fictional, but I can say for sure that there is a barrier whenever movements go way off to the point it just doesn't even sit correctly in a scene, hence creating the wrong feeling I've been buzzing about. It's not really how it's way too unrealistic, rather it's more about how the animation was stretched a bit too far from the edge that it just makes the viewing experience less refined.
The following PVs are light-hearted compared to the first one. The style and mood of these PVs invoke a sense of warmth as we, the viewer, are shown a side of a student as their sensei. I always find these PVs really interesting, as not only they are fan service, it gives somewhat an idea to others on what entails to that specific character. The first one is about Jaymie Saori and about her childish side of her. I don't really have a great way to describe it, but as shown in the PV, we see a different side of Saori aside from her usual stoic and serious vibe. The PV begins with Saori looking over the glass, looking delighted over beauty products. The lighting and the environment, as shown in the video, really gives off a mellow tone, paired with the music from what I think are chimes, which invoke the sense of youthfulness. Shortly after, we arrived in the perspective of Sensei, and she got startled as soon as we approached her. It appears she was still on edge and lost in thought looking at the products. After that, she asked us, Sensei, if it's weird, which I find really adorable. We know Saori as this serious student, capable in doing what she's told to do. But this time, we see a different side of her, which makes you fall in love with such character given them more personality to say the least. Dust-like particles and leaves dropping, adding more to the whole vibe of the scene, which implies that maybe Saori is warming up to Sensei. We later see Sensei giving a gift to Saori, and it is the thing she always wanted. She then asks Sensei if she can use it, implying that she might be still nervous after everything. Movement is really wild here, but I appreciate how the entire sequence looked. The following scene shows Saori looking around as if she is trying to show Sensei if it looks good on her. Spoiler alert, it does.
If I were to describe this PV with one word, it would be animation. Let's look at this front-facing Saori, yeah? You might have already seen the odd movements on some parts that would either just be exaggerated or a bit unnecessary, and in this case, Saori's movement was too bouncy, leaving this very cartoonish looking style. But here's the thing, in my opinion, animation consistency is important, and to put it into this context, it would be that the fact that this is the only scene that has this bouncy style, and to be honest, this scene in particular generally feels out of place. I wouldn't really be writing that first sentence if I was just gonna talk about how shit the animation is, because it's not. Instead of focusing on this scene specifically, let us just push out and expand our view from here to here. If you haven't watched the PV before, and well, that's completely fine, since I don't think anyone really does at this point, all of these scenes have improved animation. I didn't really expect that they would manage to pull this one off, since, as I mentioned before, in most cases, live 2D animations will usually have weird movement quirks, it usually has. But in this case, it's not really that present. I mean, other than this one scene, you don't really see any parts of the animation from all of the scenes to be finicky, or that it never really gave off the wrong feeling, like the previous ones I pointed out. Music in media always has a purpose. It is most commonly used as a way to enhance the feeling of a scene, or set a tone for a scene. Now, ever seen a movie? Maybe a series or an anime? Well, all of those mediums have music in them, right? But most of the time, the one that carries a scene is either the sound design, the acting, or the cinematography, right? But sometimes, the music can be a cherry on top to really sand that emotion home. An example I could give is a show that I finished not too long ago that some of you might have heard of. It is called Suits. There are multiple scenes that I could pick out from, but there is one that I really like. How does that connect to the Atsuko PV then? Some of you might be asking. My response would be that the music in that scene in Suits helps you get more immersed. You can really feel the scene at an emotional level. The scene itself is already emotional, but the music increases the emotion tenfold to really just make the audience feel way more than initially. And that is also the case for the Atsuko PV. When I was reading the comments on my previous video, some people mentioned that they let's just say, they got emotional after watching a Blue Archive PV, and it was either the 4th PV or the Atsuko PV, aka the PV we are currently talking about. This comment from Nepurin mentioned that the PV boosted their lifespan, and to my own knowledge, I can fairly assume that the reason why they felt that way is that, well, the music was just that good. I would consider the Blue Archive OST to be an electronic dominant soundtrack collection. A lot of the tracks, either Mitsukiyo, Karut, or Nor, and so on, create are mostly electronic. There are some exceptions to this where the composers are slowly branching out to other genres that are a bit further away from electronic, with OSTs such as 179, 180, 187, and 202. And seeing the genre variety they're trying to pull off is such a treat to see. A fun little thing that I've noticed as of recently is that PVs from Blue Archive China mostly uses original and newly made soundtracks. And as of recently, they've been pushing out PVs with music exclusively tailored for that PV. As of writing this, they actually made another PV that is more focused on Sims with Hoshino out of all things. And guess what? Original soundtrack that fits the theme of both Hoshino's chill demeanor and the theme of said PV. Moving forward, other than the music, the Atsuko PV features this pinkish cool color tone to further emphasize the cool breeze of the flower field. And lastly, I wanted to mention that nearing the end, the music started to slowly drop off from having multiple instruments playing in tandem to just the piano. And the amount of notes played by said piano also decreased by a good amount, creating this fade of a melody accompanied by strings by the end of the PV. I love this way of ending the PV because all of that emotion that was built up and absorbed by you from the music stays even after the PV ends. Once the music ends, all you can feel is what the music made you feel initially, and it's gonna be there until, well, you do something else.
Hakari Atsuko, the princess of the Ari squad. I've always liked her design as she's shown to be mysterious and pretty simple. But beneath all of those is a beautiful and vulnerable girl, which I find really stunning. Flowers are always used to symbolize an emotion or feeling, and the PV is shown to use it. And I always like the bit of symbolism shown in videos, as it really ties the entire video as a whole. The video begins with a close-up shot of a butterfly fluttering over a field of flowers. I once again add a note of the uses of petals or leaves falling in the scene, which really adds to the warm atmosphere it is implying. It is later followed with hands holding flowers in front of her face, as if they are trying to get her attention. We later realize that those hands came from behind, and we turn around, we see Atsuko at full display. I love the sequence of events here as it implies us, Sensei the viewer, is somewhere with Atsuko on some sort of a date. The next scene shows a pan-out shot of Atsuko sitting in a field of flowers with a bouquet on her arms. We notice a crown of flowers on her head, to which, for those who are uninitiated, gives a nod to her as a royalty, as she is referred to as princess by the rest of her squad. The flowers on her arms are, from what I could tell, are daisies. Daisies are known to invoke the feeling of purity and innocence according to the flower language, which will be explained a bit more later by Atsuko as it is the main topic of the video. She commented on the different meanings of the flowers and what it entails to the squad for her. The entire segment of her talking about the underlying meaning of the daisies and how it means to her squad, it shows how much she really treasures her friends along with Sensei. As one who likes these types of symbolisms, I find it quite cute how they concern a simple flower to mean a lot of things for each members of the squad. It really shows the depth of one flower entails to a person and tells how much thought goes through one's mind when gifting it to a person.
And that's it. That's all I could think of when I was going through these. Okay, editing Astrum here. Just want to say that I completely forgot to write the closing segments section, so I'll be just doing this with no script whatsoever. And I'll be quick, trust me. So the PVs. I wish I could go more in depth when it comes to the Blue Archive PVs, but the main issue lies with the fact that it's a Blue Archive PV. Like, it doesn't really have like a lot of depth in it, so I don't really have a lot of things other than to, well, refer to the main story that is based off. And for example, let's say an actual fucking promotional video in real life, like there's a lot of things I could take I could take account for, like a lot of things that I can just explain. But Buru Aka PVs just don't. They just kind of don't have that aspect with them, and that's a lot of things that I'm missing out, which is sad. I really want to talk more about Buru Aka PVs, but they're just a bit bare bones. Since I also didn't really initially plan to make a follow-up to begin with, but I felt a bit obligated when I took too long with the prior video. And the other reason why this video took so long is because of the fact that I had a lot of fucking hurdles to go through. So yeah, that's part of the reason why. I won't really go into detail why, but majority of it was because my PC was shit and Pengy had issues with the environmental space where he was recording in. Let's just say it was not pleasant. It was not pleasant for him. But yeah, I think that's it. And one last thing before I go, I actually found the artist, the animator who, well, animated these PVs, and it's this person on Twitter. Go follow them. Actually, they make great shit. They make great shit. I love their works, and whenever I just see like one of their work in progress posts, every time I scroll to Twitter, I just get a delight taste on my mouth. Anyway, that's all for me, and I hope all of you enjoy my content, because if at this point, if no one does, what's the point of making them? right, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's all for now, and see you guys later.